Welcome back to Witch on the Holy Night. Yes. I don't know what to say. I guess let's just hop right into it. It's been a while, or at least it feels like it. It always feels like a long time in between these recordings. But why you gotta say that? Why? Yeah, thank you. Now let's rewind 5 hours prior to this glutton for punishment, going to bed. It was 7 o'clock in the evening, just after the unproductive discussion between the two mages and the boy had ended. Leaving her roommate and the intruder in the drawing room, the girl walked alone through the foyer. From there, she headed to the west wing. These were Alice Koenji's personal chambers, in which even her roommate, Ako Aozaki, seldom dared to step foot. The foyer was illuminated only by pale moonlight. Hard footsteps echoed from the dreary moonlit lobby. In such mansions in Japan, there was no custom for removing shoes at the door. Hence, Alice crossed the foyer in her boots. She only removed them when she would relax in her bedroom. Suddenly, she remembered something from her childhood. She used to enjoy the feeling of the cold hardwood floor on her bare feet and would walk around the foyer on particularly sunny days. After her father affectionately scolded her for it, she never did it again.
そうだったわね。青子は結局守らなかった。
She let out a quiet sigh. Alice's new roommate, whom she took on after coming to Japan, would not comply with her instructions.
落ち着かないものはしょうがない。
Ako would say, changing into her slippers. Ako might have found it natural to do so, given that she lived in a typical Japanese house through middle school. But every time Alice heard her flip flopping through the foyer, she wanted to cancel their cohabitation. By now, Alice was not particularly bothered by it anymore. Human adaptability was remarkable at times and ungracious at others. The emotional attachments of the past had proved far too brittle under the weight of reality. A little blue bird was perched on the banister. Its tiny chirping made Alice stop and look its way.
今夜は放っておくわ。今は青子の問題よ。
The lack of feeling in her voice made the bird tilt its head as it sang. Tweet, tweet, tweet. It thrilled. That's not thrilled. As if they were questioning its master's uncharacteristic leniency.
約束は約束よ。今夜ぐらいは多めに見ないと。青子と彼はそれだけの活躍をしたのだし。
She said to the bird, her voice betraying her discontent. If you win, I'll let you go. She would keep that promise, in spite of the unquenchable desire to fight that burned in her chest.
でもその後の処遇は別の話。条件付きのゲームに勝ったぐらいで、いつまでも得意げでいられるのは心外だわ。
Perhaps it was perfectionism born of fastidiousness, but despite her prim demeanor, Alice Koenji was a sore loser. It did not matter to whose magecraft was superior. To her, whose magecraft was superior. Losing the game had proven hard to move on from. The little bird fluttered its wings in agreement. Drinking in Alice's content, it was itching to dive bomb the invader. It looked like a soldier saluting a superior officer as it preened itself. The bluebird turned to face its master. Its light-hearted tweeting seemed to display a desire to deal with Sojiro first thing in the morning.
そうね。理由さえできたのなら、瓶なり本なりに入ってもらいましょう。
Except her words lacked any bite. On the face of it, They were the chilling kind. They were the chilling kind one might come to expect from the witch's lips. But then again, so tame as to remind you of a certain robin's flapping.
しばらくの話よ。けど、それも一時だけ。私の我慢も長くは続かないし。だいたい、青子も人にかまけていられる立場じゃないわ。いつかも。
Sorry, it's just I'm so off today, bro. What's going on, bro? I need to talk to somebody. What's happening? When that well, I guess I could do that. No, you guys don't really care. I don't think. When that time came, expelling him would be simple. Alice was well aware her roommate was a oh my god, pragmatist. I almost said protagonist with no vision. The situation she created would not allow her to wait around. She could only afford to protect that boy for 3 to 4 days at most. Beyond that, Alice sensed Alco would crack and say something like, "You take care
そ
of
れ
this,
まで待
Alice."
つか。あるいは、私の我慢が効かなくなるか。どちらにしても、結果は変わらないわ。
Alice Koenji would suffer no more irritations. And protecting a witness, let alone allowing them to live in her mansion, was an indignity. Alice looked up, fascinated by the dense fog that had crawled into the foyer. Above the fireplace was a single mirror. Roughly 3 feet in diameter, it decorated the wall where one might find a painting. Its surface was faintly clouded and vaguely reflected the foyer's appearance.
スナークをなくした影響でしょうね。鏡の機能、しばらくは制御できないみたい。
The little bird joyfully chirped at its master's mumbling. The bird attempted to imply that there was no need for her to lift a finger, not if the nuisance would fall into the mirror of its own accord. Or perhaps, had the little bird had not sang, Alice would have come to the same conclusion. For some reason, she recalled an earlier conversation.
これでも一番無難だと思う。
In response to her question, the boy inside the bottle shrugged his shoulders and answered. From his perspective, the city and the mansion were no different. It seemed that having just moved from the countryside, everything was something he had never seen
自
before.
慢できることじゃないが、まだ書き物さえ満足にできないし、都会のルールは複雑すぎて、何が正しいのかさえ区別がつかない。
More than embarrassment, his voice was full of resentment. He was angry about something, though Alice could not tell what. But
だから、どこにいても危ないことに変わりはないんだ。極端な話、道を歩くだけでも、人と話すだけでも不安になる。俺は、どこでだろうとうまくやっていける保証はないんだよ。けど、ここにはそんな奴に気を使ってくれる人がいる。気遣ってくれる理由は物騒なものっぽいけど、それは本当に贅沢なことだと思うんだ。
her eyes welled up ever so slightly. Those soft words were something she could not brush off, because they made sense to her. Given that everything in the city was a danger to him, nothing had changed after coming to the mansion. In reality, he had no reason to fear this place in particular. If anything was different from the outside, it would be that someone here was his ally. With that view, he had been entirely sincere. His explanation hadn't contained any flattery towards Alice Koenji, nor pandering to Alko Aozaki. He was simply speaking from the heart. I like it here.
今、鏡に迷い込まれるのは迷惑ね。鏡の機能は侵入者の探索に専念させたいし、彼が迷い込みそうになったら止めてあげて。
The bird shook its feathers to her strange instruction. Alice looked away from the mirror and continued her walk. The bird chirped in
あなたの
protest.
仕事よ、ロビン。それぐらいの役には立って。
Leaving the bird with that icy retort, she vanished into the west wing. I don't really like the bird. All that remained was the moonlight. and a little blue bird trembling at an perilous prospect of unprecedented change. Well, that's the end of the chapter. Okay. So that's kind of awkward considering I ended the last episode kind of early when I literally just had to play 7 more minutes and I would have been done. But are you for real or not? On to the next chapter episode. Once, long ago, I saw a beautiful bird fly overhead. Round and round, it circled the distant blue sky. How high it flew in this era when humans, not birds, reigned supreme. And yet the bird was completely uninterested in humanity's endless desire for expansion. Our creation of even higher homes are the smoke bellowing from the industry's chimes. The sky extends further than the eye can see. It belongs to no one, not now, not then. The bird was a truly noble creature, flapping its wings powerfully across the wild ancient sky. Until the sudden sound of cold iron. A wing is shot. Its symmetry is gone forever. Cruel and tragic, its body plummets downwards. Not knowing its fate, the bird frantically beats its wings till the very end. One moment soaring with eyes to the sky, the next crashing down to the dry, hardened earth. This was the dream I saw. No matter how much I thought about it, its details remained clouded. What did the bird look like, for instance?
はい、今日の授業はここまで。試験範囲の総まとめなんかやっちゃいましたけど、これうちのクラスだけですから、よそのクラスには内密にお願いしますね。担任特権と思ってください。ほら、原告の平均点ぐらいは学年一番にしておくと、皆さんも鼻が高いと思いまして。
Mr. Yamashiro chuckled as he finished. This was typical of the kind teacher responsible for year two class C, the master at relaxing his pupils.
先生、口元に本音出てる。鼻を高くしたいのは私たちじゃないですよね。
鼻っていうかメンツですよね。先生、里中先生に嫌味言われてばっかりだし。
つうかはっきり言えばいいんすよ。お前ら頭悪すぎだって。
いえいえ、テストの点数だけが学生生活ではありませんから、僕から言うべきことは何も。先生方も
Whoops. I don't know what just happened. I think I
試
accidentally
験範囲
clicked
の総まとほら、
one of the back buttons on my controller, and then it just said, everything
Tsuka.
doesn't need to exist.
いえいえ、テストの先生方もそこまで目くじら立ててるわけじゃないので、別にクラス全員が赤点でも僕の人生には何ら関わりはないんですけどね。しかし一方では一人厄介な御人がおりまして、皆さんが選んだ全校生徒代表の方なんですが、これが恐ろしいのなんの。テストの点数が低いのは生徒ではなく教育する側が無能だからです。教育委員会への報告準備はいつでもできていますので、と日夜脅してくるんですよ。それでも生徒たちが治らないようなら、その時は直接私が監督しますとか、生徒としてどうなんですかね、あれ。
The warm atmosphere in the room suddenly fell below freezing. The students of Class C now knew who their true enemy
あー
was.
そっか。山城先生生徒会の顧問だったっけ。ナム
さすがは応援団を立ち直らせた女傑。
教師一人退職に追い込むなど造作もねえ。やっぱりな、会長絶対年サバ読んでるって。あの迫力同年代と思えねえし。ほら、うちの女子と比べると特にこうおっぱい的に。
先生、木の実だけでも A 組に引き取ってもらえませんか？そりゃ男子はみんな猿ですけど、こいつだけレベルの違う猿ですよ、絶対。
あれでも女子 A 組だけどあんまり成績良くねえよな。中の上ぐらいじゃなかったっけ？
そうだけど別にいいんじゃない？塾も行ってないし、生徒会仕切ってたまにバイトまでしてるんだから。あれで学年トップだったら逆に気持ち悪すぎ。
だよな。首位は副会長に任せとけばいいんだよ。
まあまあ皆さん、噂話はそのあたりで。地獄耳という言葉もありますから。じゃあそれなりに復習をよろしく。あんまり点数が悪いと冬休みそのものがなくなりますからね。あ、それとしずきくん、ちょっといいですか？
Mr. Yamashiro gathered his things and beckoned for Sojiro to join him in the hallway. There were no other students to be seen, despite its being break time between classes. Voices were audible in the distance, but the hall itself felt strangely quiet and calm. Perhaps it was due to the sense of confinement created by the lack of windows. Usually, students spent their breaks either in their classroom or on the
何
veranda.
ですか山城先生。
いえ、そう大した用事じゃないんですけどね。試験前にこんな話をするのもデリカシーがないんですが、気になったので。
Though this level of concern from a teacher startled him, Sojiro felt reassured. It was only natural. After having to deal with such difficult personalities lately, Mr. Yamashiro's trivial questions were refreshing.
はい。学校の作りや決まりなら自分なりに分かってきました。友達も増えましたし。
そっか、それはよかった。うちのクラスは口の悪い面々だけど、その分気を使わなくていいからね。
Sojo's eyes shone brightly in appreciation. In Aoko's words, Mr. Yamashiro was a brutish, forgettable, downright detestable man who did not even deserve the title of a teacher. But Sojiro found him considerate in his own way.
アルバイトもほどほどにね。試験前だって言えば、大抵のところは休ませてくれるから、あまり無理はしないように。また、試験で困ったことがあったら、周りに相談しなさい。一人で悩んでいても時間の無駄だよ。ほら。
With a wave of his hand, Mr. Yamashiro was gone. The pure-hearted Sojiro gave him a solemn nod, as if to say he accepted the advice of his so-called forgettable teacher, and went back into his classroom. And then,
女のことで相談だ。
Sojiro had not wasted a moment in putting Mr. Yamashiro's advice into practice.
そうらしい。難問にぶち当たっているんだ。深く考えてみて気づいたんだが、どうも自分は発想が貧困らしい。
Sojiro averted his eyes out of shame over his lack of insight. You are asking the wrong person. That's all I gotta
い
say.
や、豊かだと思ってたことがびっくりなんだけど。まあいい、こっち来い。
Shocked as he was, Kinomi grabbed Sojiro by the shoulder and pulled him over to the wall. Kinomi had nearly burst out laughing when Sojiro, with a straight face, had admitted his difficulty with girls, but he realized it was the first time Sojiro had ever turned to him for advice. Sojiro was always able to break down any task at his part-time job into bite-sized pieces, but he was clearly struggling with a different problem now. This was going to take some serious effort.
で、なんかやっちまったのかいや。
これからやるのかもしれない。木の実、例えばの話、マッドベアにハリセンボンみたいな女の子が入ってきたとする。 その子は俺が嫌いでマッドベアから出て行ってほしいようなんだけど、俺
Soldier explained that he couldn't just quit his part-time job at the restaurant. He needed the money. Kinomi grunted a few times to indicate he was still following Sojiro's story.
つまりその女を追い出したいと。
逆だ。なんとか認めてもらいたい。隠していたけど、俺はその女の子が嫌いというわけじゃなくて。
Sojiro furrowed his brow. Kinomi could not help but laugh at his friend's lack of manly resolve in his answer. Girls were the one area where Hosuke's skills and experience were triple those of Sojiro.
なんだよ、要はナンパかよ。むしろ仲良くなりたいってわけ？
Sojiro wasn't sure how to respond. He nodded slowly without really understanding the implication of what Kinomi had said.
けど、どうすればいいのかわからない。そもそもどうやって同い年の女の子と仲良く話ができるんだ？
クラスの女どもとは話してんじゃん。あれでいいんだっつの。俺は羨ましいっつの。持ち前の天然系で押してけばいいべ。山育ちってのは希少なアイデンティティだと思うぜ。珍しいものは生かさないとさ。
そうかな。珍しいというのはあんまりいいことじゃない気がする。だいたいそもそも嫌われている場合はどうすればいいんだ？クラスのみんなは親切だけど、相手はハリセンボンだ。いや、この際ハリネズミでもいい。
そういう場合はめげなきゃいいんだよ。相手が折れるのを待つって寸法だな。トゲだけに。
Sojiro's brow sunk even deeper still.
この例え話はダメだ。
He needed more concrete material to work with.
ばっか。女なんてのは機嫌を取ってればいいんだよ。まずは女の趣味とか大事にしてるもんとか聞いて、そこをフォローすればいい。自分の都合より相手の都合だ。まずは外堀から攻めろってことだな。
外堀？外回りか。
もち。その後はまあ結局はこれが一番効果的なんだけどな。袖の下ってやつ？プレゼントで釣れ。そん時の需要と供給さえ合えば、嫌われてても受け取ってもらえる。受け取らせちまえば、あとはそれが義理になるってもんだ。
Kinomi then proclaimed that with an odd sense of pride that this approach had resulted in only failure for him.
けど問題がある木の実。確かにご飯とかそういうのをおごってもらうと嬉しい。
そんな金はないってんだろ。分かってる分かってる。仕方ないね。そういうしずきくんのために一丁割のいいバイトを紹介してやろうじゃねえのよ。
They slid from the side of the classroom deeper into one corner, to in front of the lockers where no one stayed for long. It would be days before Sojiro realized that the suggestion he was receiving was of the illegitimate kind, the kind he should not have shared with anyone. That night, dinner at the mansion was a feast of bread. Soft slices lay stacked in the center of the table, surrounded by variously colored jams. In a bowl was salad, mainly lettuce, with a small plate of unevenly cut ham. Sojiro may have had no frame of reference for what an average family dinner should be, but he could tell that this was most certainly not normal. In truth, it was a first-rate case of laziness.
チョコのペースト切れたままじゃん。アリス、新しいの買っておいてって言わなかった？
今日は一日部屋にこもっていたから。第一、チョコレートを食べるのはあなただけよ。 自分のものは自分で調達をするべきね。
For these two girls, however, this dinner seemed to be completely normal. They had a system of irregularly taking turns being in charge of meals, and tonight was Alice's turn. Normally, she would spend as little time and effort as possible, only truly applying herself when there was something to celebrate. Of course, Sojiro was none the wiser to Alice's unique approach to food preparation. For him, it was a plain, lackluster meal. I don't know why I said it like that. And when it came to dinner, not saying anything to each other was a staple of their meals. The sound of cutlery, the scraping of chairs, and the tick-tock of the clock were the only things to be heard in the sunroom. Sojiro himself had already eaten. At this moment, he was watching the going-ons from the drawing room.
宗十郎、9時からアルバイトでしょ。行ってらっしゃい。私たちのことは気にしないでいいから。
ああ、じゃあ行ってくる。
Sojiro donned his coat with a goodbye nod. When Sojiro glanced again at the sunroom, he momentarily locked eyes with Alice, or so he imagined. She had been ignoring him all day, and not just refusing to talk to him, she had avoided him so much so as not to look at him all day until this very moment. He could understand if he was annoying her as an outsider in the mansion, but he felt no animosity in her gaze just now.
今の様子を見てたのかな。
Sojiro looked nervously at his surroundings for a moment before heading to the foyer. Alice only let her gaze return to normal when she was completely sure he was gone.
ああ、めんどくさ。
I'm sorry. Alko was appalled by Alice's brazen display. So much so, her immaculate veneer of apathy crumbled.
何？献立に不満でもあるの？青子。
もちろんあるけど、いつものことだし慣れてるわよ。私が呆れてるのは、あんたの意地の悪さの方。徹底的に無視してるくせに、相手の反応を伺ってるなんてめめしくない？罠張って待ち受けるようなもんじゃない。
彼の反応なんて探ってないわ。そもそも興味がないもの。それと、今のは差別発言ね。めめしいという表現は女性軽視に過ぎるわ。今の場合なら、あなたは矛盾していると言ってちょうだい。
うわ、自覚ありときた。
Choosing not to rise to her roommate's jibe. Jive? Is that? Oh, okay, whatever. Alice resumed eating. Alko tore off a piece of bread and ate them one by one, anger still visible in her face.
じゃあここからは青崎青子としてじゃなく共犯者としての質問ね。アリス的に彼を見逃していいと思える判断材料はない？ありえないけど実は彼も魔術師でしたなんてオチであったとしてもここに住まわせるのは容認できない？
その理由なら認めるわ。彼を許すのではなく、そんなことに気づかなかった私たちへのペナルティとして。そうね。今のは絶対にありえない話だけど、それと同じに絶対の結論もまたないわ。彼がここに住む選択を飲む場合すらあるかもしれない。気の迷いは私にだってあるのだし。
ええ、そういうことよ。今は私との義理とかプライドで冷静を保ってるあんただけど、あいつの努力次第で少しは。
それは諦めて。彼が何をしようと無駄だから。あなたも知っていると思うけど。
Alice had never been the type to let her guard down around others. The young witch despised humans, having recreated so many of their objects in fairy tales.
そんなのはあんた個人のトラウマでしょ。自分の意固地さを魔女の血統云々で棚上げするのはそれこそめめしいわ。いいじゃない。嫌いなら嫌いではっきりしてれば。 私が気に食わないのはね、あんたのどっちつかずの態度よ、アリス。
どっちつかずの態度。
そう、無視するなら徹底して無視してやれって言ってるの。ガチガチに守りを固めて、そのくせ城門だけ開けて、獲物が油断して入ってきたら串刺しにする気満々とか、相棒として見てられないわ。あいつにできることなんて閉ざされた門を開けることぐらいだっていうのに、その機会さえなくすのはどうなの？
Hey, yo, Alco kind of spitting right now.
ごめんなさい、青子。もう少し簡単に言って。
And then there's that.
その例えは、ちょっ
In plain Japanese, by the way. That's probably what she actually said. But Alice seemed unable to grasp Alco's metaphor. Yo, I'm telling you, bro. If we get memberships, that's the first emote that's getting put. That's too good. Meanwhile, Alco had up to here with her roommate's lack of self-awareness, and was starting to lose her
だ
cool.
から興味ないとか言っておきながら粉かけるなってこと。あんなにチラチラ盗み見たらあいつ変に勘違いしちゃうかもしれないでしょ。アリスはああ見えて本当は自分と仲直りしたがっているに違いない。じゃあ早速部屋に押しかけてみようとか。
そういうことになるの？
なる。少なくとも私だったらいい加減イライラして、話があるなら校舎裏まで来いって決着つけかねないレベル。このドラ
Word?
そうだったのね。気をつけるわ。別に彼と話をする気はないんだし、私も彼を見ていたというより、彼の
Whoops.
手足ってなんで？
手足は手足よ。彼個人には思うところはないけど、あ、それが少しだけ
I
気
keep
になって
skipping.
つい視線で追っていたのね。
あの夜って遊園地のこと？なんかしたっけあいつ。
Alice's expression soured. She still felt the sting in her
飛ん
defeat.
だでしょ、彼。レールの上から私のダンプティに向かって。
ええ、そんなこと言ってたわね。勢いでつい1メートルぐらいだから飛んじゃったとか。
Ako had not actually seen it in person, luckily. All she knew was that the spell she had placed on Sojiro was part of the reason he survived that jump of death. Alice, on the other hand, had observed the whole scene from the clock tower. It had only lasted an instant, but it had burned itself into her mind's eye. More than when her precious moon had fallen at Alco's hands, and Flat Snark had come down.
でもそれがどうしたの？卵の敵討ちってわけ？
ダンプティは壊れるのが仕事だから、敵討ちも何もないわ。ただ、人間の体ってあんな風に動くんだなって。
As it goes, for someone with as little human interaction as Alice, Sojiro's leap must have appeared quite remarkable. Ooh. Particularly because his legs were orders of magnitude less capable than those of an animal in a forest. And yet, even with such feeble legs, with those meek arms of his, he managed to fly through the open air like a bird. To her, it was akin to the feeling city folk get when they see a wild creature in its natural habitat.
気にしないで。機会があるならもう一度見たいと思っただけ。別に彼に何を期待しているわけじゃないわ。
なるほど。アリスのプロイって大体が人型じゃないしね。単に物珍しさで見ていただけか。
Alco sighed and released the tension from her shoulders. She was disappointed to discover that Alice's behavior stemmed from simple curiosity, like that of a child with a new toy. And Alice was in no position to take issue with her reaction. And how could she? She was not entirely sure what it was that she herself was feeling.
夕食、明日は私が作るから。試験前だってのに、こんなしょぼくれたもん食べさせられたら、 一夜漬けする気合も湧かないわよ。
ご自由に。私も手が空いて助かるわ。
Night came and went in the mansion. For better or for worse, the disturbances caused by the foreign invader had not yet caused the kettle to boil over. The next morning at 6:30, as sunlight spread across the sky, Sojiro walked to school with Alko in the chilly morning's air.
いい？洋館にいるときは極力一人にならないこと。
It was her intention to keep Sojiro safe until he left the mansion. Nonetheless,
眠い。6時から登校とか、あんたも働き者ね。
そうでもないよ。30分仕出しを手伝うだけだし。
his work ethic was a little too strong for a student entering finals.
それより青崎、無理してないか？別にこっちに付き合うことないんだぞ。
ご心配なく。生徒会室で仮眠取るから。約束だし、門までは一緒に行くわよ。
But internally, Alko was worried. Wow, what is going on? What traps did her roommate have in store for him? She could not imagine. Alice had planned anything to go down in the woods, but she wanted to be safer than sorry. The least she could do was accompany Sojiro to school. That much she was firmly committed to. Another very great emote face just then. Any traps that presented themselves could then be dealt with on the spot. Well, not dealt with so much as be destroyed, since that was Alko's forte. But that would be enough to keep him safe for the time being.
帰り道に関しては、アリスもそこまで暇ではないと信じるしかないんだけど。
If Alice was willing to put all her energy into a new trap after the first had failed, then they were as good as dead anyway. But Alko would cross that road when she came to it. It all depended on how deep Alice's dislike of Sojiro really went. It would have been enough to make her abandon her pride as a witch, something she had protected fervently until now. If that were the case, Alko knew she would never be able to keep him safe. The moment 24/7 protection became necessary was the moment she had failed. Her character led her to focus on what she could do in the here and now and ignore the rest. And this current plan of hers was the best attempt at doing right by everyone. They left behind the Koenji estate, and the two remained together until the residential area at the bottom of the hill, where Alko glanced casually at
と
Sojiro.
ころで、何か考えてる？
Surprisingly, Sojiro saw through her harmless question and sensed the bigger issue. How was he going to win over Alice? In fact, he had been thinking about that very question. According to his friend, there were 3 basic approaches he could take. One was the roundabout approach.
こいつは時間がかかるが最も自然だ。人間ってのは自分が好きなものを大切にされるとコロッと気を許しちまう。仲間意識ってやつだな。
Can I just let this song rock? Are you guys okay with that? Like, bro, the main theme remixes are so good in this game. Bro. Can we just talk for a minute? Can we just talk about how Wish on the Holy Night might be one of the top visual novels of all time? The visuals, the music, the ambience, the plot, everything, man. Like, they have all this wild stuff going on, but it's still so, like, intimate. Like, it's still... I understand what's going on. I understand what our goals are. I understand our 3 characters, the main cast. I understand the side characters. Everything's just so memorable. And it uses its atmosphere and its like whole ordeal to make a unique product that no other game, book, visual novel can emulate. And it's just amazing. All right, I just wanted to talk. In other words, instead of focusing on the person one wishes to win over, one should focus on their interest. It was a surprisingly mature opinion coming from Kino Mi. Unfortunately, Sojo had no idea what sort of things Alice liked. She seemed very fond of the mansion, but what could he do clean? He clean it for her? He sensed that he would have a reverse effect. He had a distinct feeling that she would not want him touching what was precious to her. The second approach was to take the inner track.
でもやっぱり本人を落とすのが一番早い。俺たちに魅力がないのなら、魅力のある外付け装備に頼るのだ。そう、プレゼントなんだよ、しずきくん。
A quick and dirty strategy, the assassin's strike. Manipulate someone's feelings with an expensive gift. To Sojiro, this sounded like his best chance. The approach was easy for him to grasp, and he appreciated its simplicity. However, he had the same concerns as with the first approach. A step was missing, and without this step, the plan was bound to fail.
あとは、まあ、剣ってやつ？俺にはよくわかんないけどさ、やりすぎると悪い印象を持たれるとか殿下が言ってたな。私、今落とされてる？って意識させちゃダメなんだとよ。付き合った後で、あれ？私落とされた？と気づかせるのが上等なんだとか。
Though Sojiro did not quite grasp the details, he understood the basic idea. Don't press your luck. He knew that much was good advice. He would have to try extremely hard to get on Alice's good side, and he could tell it would be a long process to get there. Sojiro recalled the time he had wandered inside a fox's territory in the mountains. He had left some food on the ground for the fox, and then it never bothered him again. What is considered goodwill and kindness varies from person to person. I'm telling you, get Alice takeout, you got her, bro. But he doesn't know this yet. I mean, he just saw them eat literal trash. I mean, not trash, but like poorly put together food. But they had bread for dinner. I mean, the struggles are the struggles, but you know, you can help that. But if there's enough goodwill from one side, regardless of whether that goodwill is reciprocated, the other side will eventually start to feel an obligation to do so. That was the key.
大丈夫。考えてるよ。とりあえず自分にできることとか、したいことをしようと思う。安心してくれ。青崎に忠告されたことすら、きちんと守る方針だ。
Sojiro seemed ready to face things head on. His answer did little to reassure Aoko, however. She found herself more concerned about his safety than ever before.
学校にあるようなほうきが欲しい。
そうなんだ。できれば安く買えるところ。
He's gonna introduce a new character without saying her name? Where's she from? That looks like Aoko's hair, doesn't it? I'm just saying.
しずきの家、アパートよね。ほうきなんてもの必要とは思えないけど。
Maybe that type of hair is just a type moon thing. I don't know, but that is
ちょっと気
very
になると
Aoko.
ころがあって掃除がしたいんだ。ゴミ袋もあると助かる。
But Aoko's sister's older than her. I don't know how much older. This music. Is this her theme? Who is this character?
無駄な出費はできないって言ってたくせに。まあどうでもいいけど、うちのでよければ使う？貸してあげましょうか？
多分1日じゃ終わらないから自分で買うよ。元から欲しかったものだし。
Oh my god, this theme! Yo, who is this character and why is she getting this music? Sojiro was on his way home from his part-time job after school. It was 4 in the afternoon, 2 hours earlier than his part-time job would normally have ended. The Mad Bear's head chef had gotten into trouble with the accountants for making a student work the day before his exams. Thus, Sojiro's boss had tearfully sent him home early. Oh my god, this music. Come on. Like, tell me, why? And that is when it happened. The interruption to his standard schedule must have been just the shock he needed. what is wrong with Alco? It was good. Normally, he would meet up with Alco after she was done with the student council affairs and go home with her. However, today, Soldier was asking the other students who worked at the same place if they knew any shops in the area where he could buy a broom.
田舎者の趣味って理解不能ね。推強すぎ。
Dude, like, I'm so glad this game has a jukebox mode where I can just listen to the music at any time, because holy, this might be my most played game of 2023 just because I'm sitting and listening to the music. I already do that often, and they just keep adding bangers on top of bangers, so we're here.
うちの近くにまっついラーメン屋あるでしょ。あそこの通りを終わりまで行けば起きたって金物店がある。一式揃えるなら西口のホームセンターより安く上がるわ。どうでもいいけど、私のチャリ使う？どうせ試験明けまで使わないし。
Sojo's eyes lit up as if he had met his savior. But biking uphill to the mansion, let alone with a package to carry, was not a pretty thought.
いや、自転車には乗ってみたいけど、今回は遠慮するよ。じゃ。
Saying farewell to his coworkers, he headed to the hardware store. Oh my god. Who is this character? There's no way they just gave her, a model and everything. Just said no. I have to cheat. Can I cheat, guys? Can I pause how do you pause the game again? I have to cheat. They don't show you any other characters that aren't like important here, so okay, so it's not her. It's not Alco. Who is this? Look at the hair. I mean, I'm just saying, like, the hair is very similar. I know who this is, unfortunately. I've seen her in all the promo material. Who is this? I'm so glad they don't show you who it is. That is so cool. Who is that? When did we meet Yuri Hiko? Who the hell is Yuri Hiko? Who is this? Maybe he's not important. That's why they show you. Yukiya, yeah. So that's Kojika Kumarie. Okay, so she is maybe not important, but she's here, so maybe she is. Who would this be? Man, I gotta get out this menu. I'm sorry. He needed a cheap and sturdy bamboo broom and a large dustpan to go with it. If possible, a push cart and a stick for a splint would have been nice, too, as it happened. Sojiro wanted quite a few things. Alice returned to her work after waking up from her nap. Ooh. The Koronji estate had an annex that housed the library. Oh my god, brim to brim, there is no empty spots. The library was filled with books handed down to her from her mother, so it was Alice's territory, such that even Alco dared not to enter. If the mansion was a witch's abode left behind by the times, the library was a fairy tale quarter lost to the ages. It was a natural sanctuary for the young witch who could command ploys to do her bidding. She relied on her memory to recall the location of each book on the many shelves, and then she saw it. Upon raising her head, she was met with the most unusual sights. Elegant eyebrows bristled in the distaste. Is it Sojiro? Is she looking at Sojiro? From that moment on, she failed to accomplish anything she had planned for that day. I guess not. She was instead forced to stare at a strange sight outside her window, eyebrows fixed in that position until the sun set. Well, moving into the grand mansion on the hill had not brought any major changes to Sojiro's day-to-day schedule. He woke up, went to his part-time job, ate breakfast, and went to school. Classes came and went, still strange and new, broken up by rare and brief moments of rest until the school day ended. He left school, went to his part-time job, slept, woke up, and studied for exams. A modest life for a modest young man. continuing every day in the same fashion despite his best efforts to change his fortune. But nothing ever really changes. Whether Alco was by his side in the mansion, as was frequently the case, or whether Alice was making him drink some potion she prepared before going to bed. The former was an attempt by Alco to make him feel better. The latter was some attempt to keep him safe, even if he did not fully appreciate it. Then one day, a day like any other, while Sojiro was pouring himself some tea, as he wondered over the lack of change in life. I'm sorry, that's relatable. That's just relatable. His relationship with Alice was the same as ever, but there was one major change this morning. He was drinking black tea instead of green. Though there were all sorts of different types of tea to be found in the kitchen, a newcomer to the world of tea like Sojiro could not tell one of them from the next. Naturally, his tea-making skills were limited to tea bags, one of which he placed in his cup before returning to the dining table. Alice and Alco were already seated. The two were eating in silence. In this household, it was everyone for themselves when it came to breakfast. The diplomatic description of the breakfast would be simple. The more accurate description would be 2 slices of stale bread prepared in seconds. Alco exchanged a word or two with Alice, took a sip of tea, and stood up from her seat. Oh, since it was winter break for the high schooler, she returned to her room after eating as she normally did, while Alco headed to the front door, shoes in hand, ready for school. Yo, the squad! After hurriedly cleaning the table, Sojiro rushed out the door after Alco. Together, they walked down the long hill in the direction of school. They had spent 3 days following this very simple routine.
ところで、あれから動きはあった？
School had ended and the evening had arrived. Buttered bread rolled in one hand, Alice replied with a simple, silent shake of her head.
そう。ならあっちも次の手を考えているんでしょうね。魔術師本体の居場所は見当ついてる？
Her response was exactly the same. I see Alice wearing her fit today, her casual fit, the fire fit. Without showing the slightest sign of dejection, she continued to chew, then roll, and took a stab at her salad.
そう。私も試験が終わったら手伝うから、それまで悪いけど一人でやってて。今日からあのバカを一夜漬けにしなくちゃいけないんで、余裕ないの。
Alice's face grew dour, as if she had something to get off her chest.
問題ないでしょ？アリスはもう休みに入ってるんだから、一日全部使えるじゃない。
Alice was indeed on vacation, and could spend all day, every day, on her work as a mage. Yet she had spent the past few days holed up in the library instead. She was hardly devoting herself to dealing with her challenger, as Alco put it.
アリス？聞いてる？
わかってる。今夜からそっちもやるから。
Bro, that's the girl. Look at the fit, bro. Look at the outfit. I'm sorry. Sighing, she stood up. What was bothering Alice? And what was it she wanted to say? What had she been doing only 2 hours earlier? The young witch took her leave from the breakfast table without offering a single clue. Misaki High was a private school, and as such, its winter break started earlier than public schools. The end of term ceremony was in mid-December, followed by a brief respite before the next term begins. Of course, that was if and only if they overcame the classic obstacle lying between them and an extended break from school, final exams. The radio continued its broadcast until late night. A thermos of hot tea eliminated the need to venture down to the kitchen. An electric blanket kept away the winter cold, and a crab-shaped pastry starved off any dinnertime hunger. These were the lengths Alco had gone to. Okay, what's that in the corner? The bottom left corner. What are those slippers? What is that? Hold on. I literally cannot tell what that is. Maybe it's because I'm uncultured. I don't know. But she got magazines. She has 2 guitars, which is actually one of her quotes in Melty Blood. She mentions that she wanted to buy a guitar. Another one. Interesting room. Nice room. We've seen it before, but never really looked over it too deeply. She needed to ensure that every aspect of her surroundings helped her pull a successful all-nighter.
期末試験1日目ご苦労様。それで生まれ変わる覚悟できた？
Sojiro nodded earnestly. Upon returning from work, he encountered not the mage he expected, but a demon student council president, Awazaki. Half a day earlier, the first day of exams were over, and Sojiro was about to head back to the mansion where he hoped to put his plan into practice with.
今夜私の部屋で監禁ね。あ、夕方からのアルバイトは当然キャンセル。ちょっと本気であの点数はありえないから。
A cold blue grin greeted him in the hallway. Clenched in her fist was Sojiro's exam paper. Mr. Yamashiro had no doubt said,
ま、転校してきたばかりだし、しょうがないよね。
but she snatched the exam out of the teacher's hand the minute he tried to show her. That was how Sojiro ended up in Aoko's room instead of the room in the attic to which he was accustomed to. But her situation was far from normal. At the end of the day, she was an adolescent girl like any other. Naturally, she felt uncomfortable letting a boy of her own age into her room. However, his grades were truly something that called for desperate measures. That explained why her mood was even worse than normal today, and the vein on her forehead was pulsing visibly with anger.
先に自分の復習済ませる。
Another new song? Yo.
あんたはそのテーブル使ってて。
Ako turned her back to him and sat at her favorite desk. Sojiro was left standing before a cheap-looking glass table.
なんかいろいろと慣れないな。なあ、青崎。この青いのなんだ？
Hold on. I think they're gonna show the whole room again, but I just saw something. Restless, Sojiro found his eyes drawn to the guitar propped up in the corner. Also, I was talking about this earlier, but I keep pressing the wrong button. This girl is the one that was at this right here. This has to be the girl that was at the Can you reveal it? I was about to say, what is that? What is the point of clicking it? What's the point? Oh, you gonna mute them? Huh? What's the like? Is this muted? I don't understand. But this is the girl that was at the casino that we haven't seen since like the first chapter, which is interesting. I also thought gambling was illegal in Japan, but this is 1980 something, so maybe it wasn't back then. I mean, that's actually really valid. I think that's why. But yeah. Restless, Sojiro found his eyes drawn to the guitar propped up in the corner.
なんか薄いし青いしとんがってるしきっと青崎のことだし
Did I accidentally turn him down? Because he sounds kind of quiet. I didn't. I don't know why it feels like that. Is this muting the character? I don't know what. I'm just so interested in why you can click their portrait. I don't. What has happened?
もしかしなくても武器か
楽器よそれ。エレキはともかくアコギは音楽室で似たようなのあったでしょ。あとこれ以上青々言ったらそのとんがってるので殴るからね。
Alka is so fire, bro. Her insults are amazing. Okay, that picture in the back. Tell me that doesn't look like the girl. How do I get rid of this again? I don't remember. I remember how to play it again. That whoa, I'm seeing things. I'm sorry. I swear that lamp wasn't there before. What? All right, no. I'm sure. It has to be. It's just me. It's just me. But that girl in the back and the poster, she looks like the one that was gambling. But that's just speculation. You know? It couldn't be true. Sojiro plopped himself down onto a cushion, struggling to suppress the desire to retort that it was a weapon after all.
ちょっとは落ち着きなさいよ。いつもは耳の遠い大型犬みたいに鈍感なくせに。
I can't. In fact, it was Alko who was oblivious for once. For his part, Sojiro could not figure out why he felt so restless either. Suffice it to say, they were both pretty clueless in this moment. Can this song please not be copyrighted? That's been an issue with this entire playthrough. I've been copyright hit like on every video. Like it's been a bunch. One of them actually got blocked in Japan as well. But this song, please, I want to use it in future projects. Please, please. This is so good.
もしかして内装？この部屋の家具のグレードが今とは違うから不思議がってるのね。ここベッド以外は私の家から持ち込んだものなの。引っ越してから2年経つけど、まだ屋敷には馴染んでないでしょ。
Though she misunderstood the real reason for Sojiro's nervousness, Ako seemed satisfied that she had resolved Sojiro's anxiety for the time being and returned to her studies. She flipped through her notes and textbooks, as if fast-forwarding a tape. There was no opening for an outsider like him to intrude in her high-speed study session. Repelled by her intensity, he retreated to his table. He was at least sensitive enough to pick up on her desire to be left alone. It was a testament to Sojiro that having his needs utterly ignored, they filled the whole page, that threw me off, I don't know why, was now second nature to him, to the extent that he would now happily go about his business in solitude. Two hours passed. Then, as the clock neared 11, Ako's speed and concentration began to slip. Seeing his window of opportunity, Sojiro seized the moment to strike up a
青崎
conversation.
ちょっといいかな。
何？
She spoke hesitantly, not bothering to turn to his face. She continued to flip the pages of her textbook, albeit at a slower speed than
この3
before.
日間青崎たちの夕食事情を見てきたけど、君たちの食事はいつもああなのか？
そうだけど、おかしい？
そう言われると困るな。ただ学校じゃみんな楽しそうだった。誰かと食事をとるってことはああいう風になることだって思ってた。だからもしかすると。
もしかしないわよ。別にあんたのせいでアリスと話さないわけじゃないわ。私たちはいつもああだから。
Ako spoke calmly, with her back still turned, seemingly unaware of what he was getting at.
張り詰めた食卓だな。青崎とアリスは仲がいいと思ってたのに。
She neither confirmed nor denied his statement. She was, however, surprised by the disappointed tone in which he had made.
張り詰めた食卓っていうのは合ってるわね。アリスが何回あんたの飲み物にメスカリンを入れてたかなんてもう覚えてないし、昨日なんか堂々とサラダの中に7かまどなんか混ざってるし。ほんと、あの子何考えてるんだろう。
A bitter smile spread across her face in reminiscence. The pages of her textbook continued to turn.
メスカリン？
Gotta be some type of drug.
サ
I
ボ
don't
テン
know.
から取れる
Yeah.
アルカロイドよ。アリスが使う以上、ただの幻覚剤じゃないでしょうけどね。と、私はこんなもんでいっか。
With that, she slammed shut her fourth textbook of the night. After having scarcely changed position the whole night, she finally turned in her chair to face him.
さあ、今度はあんたを仕込まなくちゃね。今日の4科目の答案、実に宗十郎らしい出来栄えでそっと押しそうになったわ、私。
Her tone was light, but her gaze was heavy. As she stared at Sojiro, seated cross-legged on the floor.
原告、地理、数学、電子工学。あの調子であと2日続けたら、冬休みが消えるのは当然でしょうね。そうなると困るのは私なのよ、実際。
いや俺も困るぞ。休みなのに学校に行くのはなんか気が乗らない。
Sojiro calmly corrected her.
そりゃあ私のセリフだ。あんたが学校に行くってことは必然こっちまでとばっちりが来るっての。
All she could think about, as much as she tried not to, was Mr. Yamashiro and his annoying grin.
それ以前に私の目が黒いうちは オール赤なんてやつは許さない。
Fail every single class? Huh? What?
本来なら少年から叩き直すところだけど、あんたはいろいろ事情があるから、とりあえず点数だけで勘弁してあげる。私もテストは一夜漬けで片付ける方だから、あんた一人仕込むのにそう時間はかからないだろうし。
Sojiro's expression openly soured in response to her declaration. Wait, what? Right. To her declaration, it was obvious he did not think he needed her meddling in his studies.
あんたね、苦労するのは私とあなた、どっちだと思う？
Shojiro got the feeling that it would be him, but he nodded slowly nonetheless. Then again, it would probably take more effort on her part than on his. And in any case, he knew there was no way to talk her out of it.
この度はご迷惑をおかけします。
Sojiro summarily bowed his head to show gratitude and willingness to work.
よろしい。安心なさい。私だって鬼じゃないから。
I was just about to say, isn't good E, but I guess Yoroshi is the irregular version. Whatever. I don't know.
別
I'm
に
learning.
平均点狙うってわけでもなし。予定通りこなしていけば3時には眠れるわよ。
She nodded with satisfaction, pleased by his studious attitude. He had plenty of obstacles ahead of him, but that sense of humility might be enough to see him through.
って何仏心出してるんだ私。いい？しずきくん。この後頼られちゃたまんないから釘刺しておくけど、私がマンツーマンで誰かを仕込むなんてことめったにないから。これはあくまで異例中の異例だって覚えておいてね。
She spoke more to convince herself than him, but his expression still darkened. It made one want to hang a sign around his neck that read, "Please take me home," like an abandoned pet. Ako, herself for being so soft. So they didn't have any Englishmen. Did they run this translator through Google Translate? Like, what is happening? Why is there typos like that? Why did nobody like read over it? Nobody like read the visual novel before sending it out? Like, it's like their mistakes are like the most simple. Like, I don't know, like side instead of sign, right? I don't know. Wait, how do you even mess that up? Sign, side, sign. D is not even anywhere near. I guess it is maybe. I don't know. How do you mess that up? Like, I mean, it's kind of few in between, but it's like, it's this visual novel is only a visual novel. Like, you have one job. You have one job. Like, you don't have to translate the art. You just have to translate the word. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is kind of easy to review it and be like, okay, side is not what was meant to be put here. It's sign. But like I just did, right? But please take me home, like an abandoned pet. Alco, yeah, I already read this. Just, okay. For some reason, in that moment, she recalled that it had been raining that day they met each other. Time passed like the falling grains of an hourglass.
結局
The emotes are gonna go insane. Yo, these faces are so amazing. Alco squinted as light poured through the window and she donned another cup of tea. She had lost count of exactly how many she had drank long ago.
一晩かかったね、大崎。
Sojiro picked up on what she left unspoken. Alco had used all her pep, and stayed up all night, but also in shouting at him. He looked pale and uncomfortable, just as he had had a long night.
ええ、甘く見てたわ、あんたのこと。
だから褒めても何も出ないって。
ある意味褒めるに値するかもね。
She was at the end of her rope, but she could not help the bite of pride The bit of pride. Wow, I can't English. That swelled up in it. Like, what's the point of even translating it correctly if I can't even read? Like, what? I don't know what I'm complaining for. His lack of even the most basic comprehension was shocking, even taking into account his upbringing in the wilderness. His ability was that of a middle school student, and that was being generous. Preparing him for exams by teaching him the new concepts and ideas was a waste of time. Rote memorization was his only hope for passing this music, man. Everything he memorized could collapse like a house of cards afterward, for all she cared, so long as he remembered for his exams. Assuming he had the capacity to be a good student in the first place had been her mistake. It took all night to cover the content for just 4 exams, and she still did not feel confident he could apply what he had so earnestly tried to memorize.
でもね、真面目なのはいいことだけど、あんた暗記するのに時間かかりすぎ。
そこは多めに見てほしい。今まで頭より体で覚えることのが多かったんだ。
Alko let out an exasperated sigh. Naturally, physical prowess mattered more in mountain life than in intellectual kind, but...
まあいいわ。これで山城からあんたの成績について相談されることもないでしょうし。紅茶、もう一杯入れてくれる？
Sojiro stood up and obeyed as Alko stretched her aching back. She had apparently bought the tea bags in bulk, so there was still plenty to use.
まったく無駄遣いだな、青崎は。
He spoke under his breath, so she wouldn't hear. It made him somehow happy to see her so tired and unfocused after the grueling all-night lesson she had given him. It did not cross his mind that the excess tea bags, far from being an indulgent purchase, were purchased intentionally to sustain them through the night. A relaxed expression came across Ako's face as she watched him, naive and peaceful as could be.
悪くないけど、せめてリーフティーで入れられるように仕込まなくちゃダメかな。
Seeming to have overheard her not so inner monologue, Sojiro made to face her.
やっぱり味は違うのか？
違う違う、もう全然。ま、正直私はどうでもいいんだけど、アリスはね、かなりお茶にはうるさいよ。そうだ、宗十郎、アリスとうまくいってる？
Ako cheerfully slumped over the table, now covered with textbooks and scribbled notes. Sojiro watched her with a hint of resentment in his eyes.
彼女と会えるのは食事の時だけで、食事と言ったらあれだろ？どうやって仲良くなれって言うんだ？
そう？私は十分脈ありだと思ったけど。そっちはアリスを怖がってないし、アリスはそっちを追い出す理由を見つけようと躍起になってるし。いい条件よ、これって。
全然わからないな。あの子とこっちの関係は遊園地前の青崎と俺の関係と同じじゃないか。一体どこがいい条件なんだ？
とりあえず反目し合ってはいないでしょ。一方通行の関係だけど、それはそれ。アリスにしちゃ上出来っていうか、理由を探している時点で可能性ありってね。あの子は反感に応えることが癖になっちゃってるから、大抵相手を自滅させちゃうのよ。
Her ominous words only confused Sojiro further.
知ってしまえば単純な話なんだけどね、あの子の場合。ただ、
Whether or not he could put it into practice was another story altogether.
難しいよ、青崎は。
He carried their tea bag cup, or what? Their teacups from the table as he spoke. Hers up and took, or Alko picked hers up and took a sip. What is, I'm sorry. Okay. As if to dispel her exhaustion.
でも、確かに君の言う通りだ。俺はまだあの子の顔しか知らない。クオンジ・アリスという名前すら定かじゃないのは、
He followed Alko's lead and took a sip of his own. His cup contained not tea, but plain hot water.
あの子のこと教えてほしい？
Akko scrutinized him carefully as she sat. Most boys would have been captivated by her gaze in that moment.
いや、そういうことは本人に聞いてあげるべきだと思う。
But he ignored her and stared straight ahead as if speaking directly to Alice herself.
そうね。ほんと、あんたってアリス好みの対応をするわ。ねえ、前から気になってたけど、客室でアリスに何を言ったの？いくら私との約束とはいえ、あの子が部外者を半日も放置するなんてありえないのよ。
He thought back to that moment. He could recall only 2 or 3 words he had exchanged with Alice after awakening in the guest room. He did not recall the conversation being anything special, but he could not bring himself to casually share it with Alko now. After all,
ねえ、どんなセリフであの子の気を変えたの
Alko eagerly pressed him for answers. Sojiro frowned, unsure of what to say. He did not know what the interaction had been like for Alice, but for him, it had felt special. Sacred, almost. The question was, why and for whom was he so concerned?
ほら、白状しなさいってば。隠し事なんて似合わないわよ。
Her disconcerting smile moved even closer. Soju did not look like he was able to stay silent much longer, as he would eventually come to realize Ako Aozaki had a sometimes troubling propensity to gossip.
まあ、あの子と何を話したかは言わないけど、今の青崎に比べれば花もロマンもなかったのだけは確かかな。さっきまでは青崎が鬼みたいだったから、いいもんだなって気がつかなかった。
He stared directly into her eyes as he spoke. Ako nearly leapt out of her seat in panic. Now that he pointed it out, she realized their bodies were practically touching. Have we ever seen this art before? I don't think we have. Maybe we have.
仕方ないでしょ。この方が効率良かったんだから。あんた、横にいないとすぐ間違えるし。
Ako stood up as she lashed back at him.
そうだね。なんか昔みたいで久しぶりに集中できた。これが異例中の異例っていうのが本当に残念だ。
余裕あるじゃない。その分じゃ今日のテストだけじゃなく、アリスとの話し合いもうまくいきそうね、宗十郎。
ああ、それはもちろん。
His cool response caught her off guard, and for a moment, she was at a loss for words. She meant it sarcastically, and yet he responded with a warm smile.
方針変更だ。まずは近くで話しかけてみるよ。嫌なことはいずれ終わるって分かったから。
Ako remained in her state of silent shock as he spoke and rose to his feet. She could not help but feel a reluctant respect for what seemed to be his newfound confidence.
とりあえず
I
今日は
didn't
一
read
人
the
で
word,
帰
I
っ
don't know
て
why.
アリスと話してみる。青崎は放課後生徒会だろ。
He was right. It was their last meeting before winter break. Normally, he would have waited until the end of the meeting, or else gone straight to his part-time job. This was part of Ako's plan to make sure he and Alice were never alone in the mansion together.
まさかあんた、一人でアリスとやり合うつもりなの？
別にやり合うつもりはないぞ。し合っても勝てないだろう、アリスには。
His reply made complete sense, which floored her.
でも、青崎がいたら話が複雑になるのは目に見えてるんだ。そんなわけで、今日はゆっくり飛び丸の相手でもしててくれ。
本気？
He felt like he was being tested, but nodded nonchalantly nonetheless. Knowing how grave the situation really was, Alko was not sure how to respond to his apparent lack of concern. The morning light coming through the window marked a stark contrast between the two, which stood bathed in light, which lurked in the darkness that went without saying. The silence lasted for only a brief moment. Staring at him gravely, she said,
そうなら止めはしないわ。
That was all she had. Her dry tone hid the significance of their pregnant silence. Huh? Oh, pregnant? I'm sorry. English isn't my first language. Not revealing the slightest sign of discord.
なんか怒ってないか大崎。
別に。それで何か考えはあるの？下手な考えは通じないわよ、あの子には。
Soldier furrowed his brow in deep thought. He knew it would be hard to get close to her through talk alone. In fact, it felt nearly
言
impossible.
葉で落ちないやつは物で釣れ。
Kinomi had been a voice of wisdom and folly for him countless times in the past. Incidentally, Kinomi had been referring to Alko at the time he shared that pearl of wisdom. But Sojiro had a distinct impression that trying to buy Aozaki's kindness with gifts would not end well.
大体アリスの趣味もわからないじゃないか。考えてみると今の自分と彼女はまるで接点がない。
Sojiro crossed his arms at a loss.
いつものことだけど何も考えてなかったわけね。
うん。でもまあ、あれこれ考えなくてもいいと思う。アリスにはあれこれ説明するとか、分かってもらおうとか、そういうんじゃなくて、なんていうか。
He pondered intently as he tried to put his vague thoughts into something concrete, but he did not spend much time in thought. With a nod, he concluded.
要は、俺が彼女を好きかどうかってことじゃないか？
He articulated that which is often so hard to say, with surprising clarity and calm. It was certainly a prerequisite for the task he had hoped to achieve. He had no hope of making her appreciate him with words, or with acts of giving with the expectation of reciprocation. He simply wished to get to know her better because he liked her. That was his honest, uncontrived intention, and it reflected the purity of his heart. But whether that was his best interest or not was another story altogether. Calculation and compromise, selfishness and conflict. Purity, such as his own, often irritated people who believed that morals went against human nature, or rather, people who were inevitably forced to believe it. Ako silently walked away without responding to what Sojiro said. Her long hair swung from side to side as she passed him.
大崎？
Noting her strangely cold manner, he called out to her. However, she was already opening the door to leave.
下でシャワー浴びてくるから、あなたは自分の部屋に戻ってて。
Her words lacked any expressive inflection. In his confusion, all Sojiro could do was nod.
いいけど、やっぱり怒ってないか青崎？
Emotion returned to her face as he spoke. Yet, it was not the typical irritated look to which he had grown so accustomed to.
そうね。あんた流に言えば、多分私は怒ってる。何に対してのものかは、あんまり言いたくないけど。
Poor Sojiro did not even realize that he himself was the reason. She looked at him. For an instant, he witnessed an emotion on her face, of which he had never seen the likes of before.
じゃあね。これが最後になるかもしれないから、お別れぐらいは言っておくよ。
He's gonna die.
あなたはアリスを甘く見すぎてる。でも、それが同時にあんたの強みなのよね。私たちには毒にしかならないけれど。
The door slammed loudly shut behind her. Her steps were audible as she walked away to the other side of the wall. The corridor must have been nearly freezing without any central heating, but Alko seemed perfectly comfortable.
ってなんで私から出ていくんだ。順番が逆。普通先に出てくのはそっちじゃない。
Akko promptly kicked Sojiro out of her room. Once again, the wooden door closed with a slam. The corridor was not as cold as he had expected. Not quite as bad as a freezer, at least. The second day of exams ended, and Sojo was on his way back to the mansion. The road grew steeper and the woods thicker as he made his way up the familiar slope. People in town called it not a hill, but a mountain, simply because it took over 20 minutes to climb. This did not sit well with Sojiro, for whom a mountain was something that could not be overcome so easily. The road was paved for one thing, and the canopy overhead let in plenty sunlight to guide the way. None of the inclines were especially steep, and no animals lurking underneath in the underbrush. There was no chance of losing his way, no reason to worry about getting lost.
情けない。まだ未練ばっかりだ。
Sojiro quietly reprimanded himself for getting so warped up in his own little world. In the past few weeks, since moving here, he had been consistently comparing the town with his former mountain home. Normally, he would not get He would not get upset over it. But in recent days, since meeting Alko, as it happened, he had become rather hung up on the difference. He was none the wiser as to why, but he knew that Alko was a force that could not be stopped. This naturally made him want to quicken his own pace. The mansion where they both lived was an antipathy of her lively personality. It stood out like a sore thumb, even in a town like Misaki. Some people said it was haunted. There were no ghosts per se, but it was inhabited by magicians. So their claims were closer to the truth than they could have possibly known.
そういえば、幽霊と魔法使いっていうのはどっちが常識外れなんだろう。
Lost in contemplation as he was, the boy failed to notice how his own lack of familiarity with the city life played into the equation. In any case, none of his pondering changed what needed to be done. Tomorrow was the last day of exams. That meant he only had a little longer until Alko stopped taking responsibility for his safety. If possible, today was going to be the day when the mansion's owner accepted his continued residence there. Sojiro slipped between the trees encircling the mansion and walked down the naturally tree-lined avenue that led him to the front door.
よし。
Taking a deep breath, he stepped across the threshold. The drawing room was where he expected to find Alice. However, he found himself face to face with the most unexpected scene. A few steps in, he arrived at the large foyer extending from the mansion's entrance. But one thing was clearly out of place. The foyer of the mansion was like a hall in a medieval castle. It was illuminated by the cold winter sun casting down through the skylight, unaided by artificial light. The wooden tiles smelled of the outdoors. What the? And there was Alice, dressed in all black, huddled against a column so enormous it resembled a sharply cornered tree trunk. The mansion was quite literally supporting her frail body, like a mother's lullaby or a gently rocking cradle. The heavy atmosphere of this building suppressed even the slightest stir, almost as if warding away any disturbance to her slumber. What is happening? The art is so insane. There, she slept in the shadows of home. Hidden away from outsiders, Her sleeping figure was enough to mesmerize anyone who laid eyes upon her. They went crazy on the art. Sojiro instinctively looked up at the ceiling out of sheer awkwardness. He wanted to surprise her, but not in this way. Her slender frame lay asleep by the fireplace. The scene was as beautiful as a painting, yet hard on his heart at the same time. Her slumber seemed breathless. She was too still, with not a hint of movement, and yet slumped against the frigid column under the cold winter sky, happiness appeared to be her blanket. A passerby would not be blamed for thinking she was in the most peaceful state of eternal slumber, death. Sojiro spoke to himself, and as he gazed idly upon her, bringing her a blanket or something warm did not so much as cross the boy's mind. Instead, as odd as it sounds, the first thing he thought to do was go prepare some tea. He had made sure to be as quiet as possible as he opened the drawing room door. On the table waiting for him were 3 pills. They were the medicine Alko required him to take every day when he arrived home. Gulping down the vaguely sweet pills and continuing on to the kitchen, he selected a box of tea from among the many in the cabinet and brewed enough for 2 people. Alice was still asleep when he returned to the foyer. Careful not to make any noise, he crouched close to the ground. He was startled by how cold the floor had felt through his pants. He thought it would be warmer here by the fireplace. But then again, he recalled how Akko had referred to it as a useless hole in the wall. What was likely the case was that neither she nor Alice knew how to use it properly. After taking the teacups from the tray and placing one in front of each of them, Sojiro carefully pulled his textbook on classic literature from his satchel. He could still see her angry face from this morning. The reason for her anger was still as much as a mystery as the unusual look he saw briefly come across her face. In any case, one thing was certain: he needed to start studying for tomorrow. Wow, I read that too fast, my bad. Thanks to Akko's instruction, today's exam went well enough, but tomorrow's would be even more formidable challenge. After how angry she was this morning, he could not accept her to help him. He complained under his breath as he cracked open his textbook. Apparently, he intended to spend his time in this fashion until Alice finally awoke. The sound of pages turning was the only audible noise in the grand hall. There was no ticking of clocks or rustling of leaves to disturb her sleep. After a few hours, Sojiro quietly rose to his feet. The light that filled the foyer was beginning to turn from white to red. He glanced again at Alice as he stretched his stiff back. She slept in perfect stillness, just as she had this entire time. Sojiro arched his brow in speculation. He had no idea what her normal sleeping schedule was like, so he had no idea as to whether he should wake up. As if reaching the end of a long train of thought, Sojiro gave a quick nod of his head and took his leave of the mansion. Today, work was a shift at the Chinese restaurant in Masaki's shopping district, the Mad Bear. Their uniforms have been made by someone with an obvious preference for garish gray. What? Oh my god. The orange apron was ablazoned with a cartoonish polar bear slashing a wok in two with its powerful claws. The design resembled warning signs about wild animals seen in the mountains and stood out in Misaki for its one-of-a-kind originality. This was the Chinese restaurant, the Mad Bear. Aside from its name and logo, the restaurant was the type of cheap, hole-in-the-wall dive that could be found anywhere. It faced competition from the ever-increasing number of chain restaurants, though it had managed to last longer than other dining spots, having received rave reviews on a regular basis. The Mad Bear, prioritizing the personal touch, focusing on its local clientele, and thus made a point to offer home delivery. It had earned it the affectionate moniker OKS, the Quick Killer Stop. Making these deliveries was Sojiro's responsibility for the time being. Places in Misaki within cycling distance fell under his domain. Anything beyond that was handled by a more experienced staff member on the legendary 50cc King Salmon motorbike. But anyway, hold on. Maybe I shouldn't say this. CC's a real thing, bro. Like I thought that was just Mario Kart, bro. What do you mean CC? What does that stand for? Hold on. Do I need to get more into vehicles, bro? Like what? CC is an actual thing people say. If you're not driving on 200cc, you're not driving. That's all I'm saying.
いや、白木のダチから聞いたんだけどな。
The delivery workers were not out on deliveries. When they weren't out on the deliveries, yeah. They spent their shift busying tables or washing dishes. Busting, my bad. The dinner rush was yet to come, and Sojiro and his fellow delivery boys were shooting the breeze while washing dishes in the back.
聞いてるか、しずき。
聞いてるよ、木の実。
The two were elbow deep in the giant sink as they enthusiastically scrubbed. At least, that is what they pretended to do while they gossiped.
和食のケニアだけじゃねえんだってよ。三崎町の大帝都にもメシアンにもその手の注文があったらしいぜ。そんなに肉が欲しいなら下市に行けばいいのにな。なんだって生肉だの大物の鮭丸ごとだのを出前させやがるのか。どうよ、こう露骨にヤバそうな話じゃね。ワニとかアザラシでも飼ってるんじゃねえかな、そいつ。
他に比べてみると確かに珍しい話だと思う。ところで木の実、ワニってなんだ？
ワニはワニだろう。だっせ、実物見たことないのかよ。まあ俺もねえけどな。今度ガクガク動物ランドのアフリカ特集ビデオを貸してやるから見とけよ。
This was a familiar pattern of conversation between the two, especially now Kinomi was used to Sojiro's lack of general knowledge. Their banter was interrupted by the delivery phone. The manager snapped up the receiver and quickly jotted down the order and address. Once he hung up, everyone in the kitchen did their best to avoid making eye contact with him. Nobody wanted to go rushing out for a delivery on such a cold day.
しずきくん、ちょっと遠いけど配達をお願い。
The manager singled out Sojiro for the task, seemingly unfazed by his staff's
はい、こ
laziness.
れ届けるもののリスト。異例だからあまり他のバイトには他言しないようにね。
The manager tore the sheet of the order and address written on it from his memo pad. Sojiro took one look at it before a grimace quietly spread across his face.
マネージャー？
なんだい？
The manager stared right back at him, as if he could tell it was what he was going to say. I'm so sorry. I don't know what's happening with me.
しかし
Cannot read that.
長いことこの商売をやっていると、時にはこんなバカな話が転がってくることもある。そうか。じゃあ、
And I'm skipping everything. Sojiro stared in admiration as the manager, dressed in black, marched out of the kitchen in his all-business way. Nowhere was free from the odd occurrence now and then. What? Did I read that wrong? Am I stupid? Oh no, I'm thinking of it wrong. Nowhere was free from the... I don't know. That just sounds weird. It doesn't roll off the tongue as well, I guess.
遅い。
It was after 10 at night. Sojiro had taken a small detour on his way home from work, and then was faced with an outraged Alco as expected. Seeing her so visibly irritated made him feel a rush of relief. He did not know why she was angry, but he could tell it was a different type of anger than what he saw earlier that morning.
遅いってまだ10時になったばかりだろう。どうしたんだ青崎。
He set down the cardboard box he had been carrying in his arms and glanced towards the fireplace. The sleeping girl was there no more.
違うわ。もう10時になったの間違いでしょ。あんたってほんと自分がどんな状態にあるか分かってないのね。いいから今に来て。
She walked briskly to the other room without pausing, leaving Sojiro standing in confusion, head tilted to one side. He proceeded to pick his box back up and followed her eagerly. He removed his coat and hung it on a hanger as he entered the living room. Apparently, today was one of those days where Alice kept herself locked away in her room. On the table were the familiar pills.
説明しなかった私も悪いけど、あなたも帰ってくる時間は守ってよね。こっちはそのつもりで作ってるんだから。
Akko handed him the pills and a glass of water with an expectant look on her face.
薬なら出かける前に飲んだけど、体の調子だって悪くないし、そんなに慌てることか？
は？なんだって私たちがあんたの健康を気にかけなくちゃいけないのよ。勘違いしてるようだけど、あんたが帰ってくるたびに飲んでるのって平たく言えば毒よ。
Okay.
即効性じゃないから効き目は半日すると出てくるんだけど、その前に新しい毒薬を飲んでおかないと古い毒が体に回ってばったり。
Genius, forcing him to always stay with them. Oh my god, actual genius.
アリスのやつ、これぐらいしないと信用できないって言い
Just
張
so
ったのよ。
smart. I'm sorry.
ほら、分かったらさっさと飲む。ま、私もこれ面倒だと思うし、近いうちもっと形のある方法を考えてみるから、それまでこの方法で我慢して。
言ってることは支離滅裂だが、とにかく今まで良くないものを飲んでたんだな。
Sojiro took the pills from her and gulped it down. The fact that it was the poison gave him no pause at all. As for his roommate's tyrannical behavior, he showed no signs of standing up to it.
まったく、毒を持って毒を制するなんて、また古風な真似するな、青崎もアリスも。
Sojiro's face relaxed into a smile upon finding the funny side of the situation. Akko was utterly dumbfounded as to how he could be happy at a time like this.
今日帰りが遅れたのは、アパートまで荷物を取りに行っていたからなんだ。そういうことなら電話の一つでもすればよかった。
荷物ってまさかそれじゃないでしょうね。
Sojiro nodded empathetically as she pointed courteously at the cardboard box in his hand.
住んでいないのに家賃を払うのはバカらしいから、今日で引き上げてきた。一応いつでも戻れるように話はつけてあるから、3ヶ月ぐらいは大丈夫だよ。
Such a sweet face, man. Look how innocent he is.
家賃？あ、そっか、そうよね。私ってばなんでそんなことを忘れてたんだろう。アリスが聞いたら喜ぶわ、そりゃ。
I'm sorry, I try not to laugh. Nah, he just ruined his own life. A smile blossomed across her face, as they say. It was the open, bold-faced look of a child who just came up with a mischievous plan. Sojiro shook with fear at the thought of what that smile might bring his way. I don't know what this... It reminds me of a meme. I don't know what meme exactly. But it reminds me of a meme, just down bad.
けどずいぶん少ないのね、荷物。段ボール1箱分しかないの？
そうかな。 十分多いだろう。それよりアリスは自室か？
ちょっと前に戻ったわ。珍しく食後もここに残ってたんだけど、待ちきれなかったみたいね。
She gave Sojiro a meaningful look while continuing to smile that sinister smile. Very
待ち
sinister.
きれなかったって何を？
For you.
そりゃあアリスが眠ってるのをいいことに、在庫のないフォションとブルーキャリコを勝手に使ってくれたどこかの誰かさんにお仕置きするためなんじゃない？
フォッションってあのお茶の葉？
そう、私もびっくりしたけどね。アリスがどっかで寝入るのはよくあることだけど、紅茶を用意して眠るなんてのは初めてだったから。どんな心境の変化か知りたくて起こしたら、アリスの方が驚いてたわ。一体誰の仕業なんだって。
Sojiro clapped his hands together as if remembering something important. He had forgotten to clean up the tea before leaving. The regret written from his forehead to chin delighted Alco's immensely. Didn't he leave it there for her? I would imagine he just left it there for her. But whatever.
そうか。それじゃあアリスは怒っていただろう。
当然、コマドリがとばっちりでドリブルされてたしね。
ああ、俺でも怒る。片付けをきちんとしないなんて、だらしないにも程がある。
Sojiro harshly scolded himself for his failure.
論点違う。あのね、寝顔を間近で見られたから怒ってるのよ、アリスは。
え？そうかな。アリスはそういうのは気にしないと思うんだけど。
あんたはそうかもしれないけど、私たちは気にするの。
Akko's glare was enough to make glass shatter. If you mind, don't sleep in the middle of the front of the door. You were literally in the entrance of the whatever. There was an indescribable intensity in the way she said that.
それは青崎たち限定の話か？
世間一般での常識。
That face gets me
自分が
every
気にしないからっ
time.
て他人もそうだと思ってると、いつかやけどするからね。
Every time.
でもそれだったらロビーで寝ているアリスにだって問題ないか。
Exactly what I said. It's her
見か
house
けたら
though. So.
放っておけないだろう、あんなの。
その心意気は立派だけど、そこはそれ。この館の持ち主は彼女だから。
She said, "I appreciate." That's what she
この
thought.
洋館内であなたが出会ったあらゆる不義不始末、失敗失態の責任は宗十郎に押し付けられるの。この意味、わかる
Akko's question sent Sojiro into a trance of deep thought until he finally
つ
uttered.
まりここはアリスの自治領なんだな。
はい、よくできました。正確には私とアリスのだけどね。領主は何をやっても許されるってことよ。
She smiled as she spoke and plopped herself down on the sofa. Sojiro remained standing behind the sofa opposite her as he ran over their conversation again and again in his head. The notion of this being their kingdom made him realize he actually had no idea where the girls had come from or their family's background.
青崎、君ご両親はどうしてるんだ？
He inadvertently blurted out, this being the question foremost on his mind.
生きてるわよ。三崎町から下りに4駅行った東川ってところの地主。死は祖父だけど、今は隠居して両親と一緒の土地に住んでるわ。
I thought her grandpa died. What? Oh, look at this. Mid video, we got a notification from YouTube Studio. Oh, that's so sweet. Oh my god. Oh my god, that's so sweet. Alright, bro. Sometimes y'all just hit my heart and I just gotta take a minute, but let's go. Yeah, I thought her grandfather was dead. I remember her saying that in one of the first chapters when they were just Alco and Alice were sitting, but I guess not. Sojiro had imagined something more outrageous for a family of magicians.
両親はね、父さんにはあんまり魔術回路は作られなかったみたいだから、その分 私には2世代分の潜在能力があるって祖父は言ってるけど、どうだか。宗十郎の期待してるような一族はどっちかっていうとアリスの方よ。私と違
I
って
guess that
英
makes
国
sense.
出身だからね、彼女。
English Japanese, because Koonji is not. Is that ain't English? Alice maybe. What does Alice mean? I'm gonna search this up because you know most names have meanings that we just don't know. Like, what does Alice mean? Just curious. Using my mobile device. Family name given English and French. What is the name meaning? Of noble rank. Okay, interesting. Just wanted to know. Alko offered nothing more, as if to suggest that was as far as she was willing to reveal for now. Soju had insisted on talking to Alice directly rather than hearing things secondhand, so chose not to go back on his word by pushing the topic further.
ま、詳しくは本人から聞きなさい。アリスの紅茶好きもそこから来てるんだし。
Whoops. I don't know if you guys heard that when I hit my mic.
なんで今日に限ってリーフティーなんか入れたの？ティーバッグを使った方がまだマシだったでしょうに。
青崎がそっちの方がいいって言ったじゃないか。アリスは紅茶にうるさいって。
Akko was momentarily at a loss for words. He seemed so oblivious most of the time, but apparently he was attentive to some details, at least selectively.
ま、いいわ。それより明日の放課後だけど、また一人で帰ってくれない？年明けの行事があるんだけど、その場しのぎで行った餅つき大会が通っちゃってさ。明日も忙しいのよ、私。
Sojiro nodded in acceptance. In fact, he had already been planning to do so before she knew that.
それはいいけど、体は大丈夫か、青崎。昨日から寝てないだろ
う。夕方に3時間ちょい仮眠を取ったから調子はいいわ。そういうあんたこそ体は持つんでしょうね。もう少ししたら昨日の続き始めるわよ。
She meant the all-night cramming session, of course. Needless to say, Sojiro was more than likely to struggle, given that he too had not a wink of sleep. All he could do was give a relieved smile. He thought back to the days just after he transferred here, when she watched his every move from the sidelines and showed a startling amount of concern for him.
いいよ。どのみち苦労するのは青崎の方だし、異例中の異例はありがたく受け取っておくとしよう。
His cheery response grated on her just a little. Why they go crazy with the art all of a sudden? Whoa. She heavied her shoulders in exasperation and dropped her head as an excuse to look away from the beaming smile on his face. Why did they just up the production? The following day, the last day of finals had ended without a hitch. That final December hurdle was finally a thing of the past, for all but one student, that is. To Sojiro, the greatest challenge was yet to come. He bid farewell to his classmates, all jittery with excitement for the last day of the term, and headed into the Shiro Inuzuka woods. The road home was no different than yesterday. Like he was reliving yet another day striding up that hill. Yet today, there was a fierce determination in his steps. Today was his last chance, and he wanted nothing more than to talk to the girl. He did not care if she was cruel to him or ignored him, nor whether Aoko was being truthful when she said that she could trap him in a mirror land or something like that. I read that so weirdly. All he really cared about was having the chance to speak with her face to face. But nothing is ever that simple. To tell the truth, what he had found finally entering the mansion was not wholly unexpected.
よく寝る子だな、本当。
There's no way. The deja vu he was experiencing made him dizzy. Faced with the exact same reenactment of the previous day, he could not help but blurt out what he was thinking. Alice was sleeping by the fireplace just as she had done yesterday. The way her legs draped to one side resembled those of a princess in the children's book. She looked more comfortable than she had the day before. Miraculously, he had a rare flash of insight that enabled him to read the situation more clearly.
飛び丸は一人何をしているんだろう。
Upon glancing back at the entrance, he made his decision, took a deep breath, and rolled up his sleeves. If today was a reenactment of yesterday, then he supposed he would play along with that idea. Sojo removed his shoes and headed for the kitchen. He was off to prepare another ill-fated pot of tea. Aren't you supposed to, change and do better? Not, whatever. Since she was angry about him using her precious façon, I don't know, this time, he turned to Jackson's fruit and herb brew. Sadly, this was about as much as Sojo could manage to mend his behavior. He had failed to realize that it was not the brand of tea that had landed him in hot water, but rather his incorrect brewing method. After filling the pot with tea, he carried it back to the foyer. His breath was visible in the cold air as he sat himself down by the fireplace. Sojo took a sip of the fruity tea he prepared for himself, and pulled his textbook from his bag. Exams were over now, but he had been instructed to take extra classes for the subjects from day one of school. Quite inevitable. The foyer was warmer than outside, but still far from comfortable. It was enough to make anyone yearn for some sort of support. Sojiro dove into his electronic textbook in the winter-chilled hall. His class was not very popular, which is why it had been recommended to him in the first place. That fact that everyone who took it started on equal footing and made it more appealing to him than any other class. His music. He downed the rest of the tea, having no appreciation for its flavor, and refilled his cup. The tea was still warm, since the chromatic teapot had excellent heat retention.
文字で物事を覚えるのは苦手みたいだ。
He vaguely recalled their conversation as his eyes advanced across the page. The lack of lighting in the foyer was forcing him to rely on illumination from the skylight. The light cut through into the room at a diagonal angle in such a way as to divide the foyer into light and darker areas, with the fireplace in shadow. The room resembled ancient ruins covered in ash, perhaps the quiet, forgotten world of a faded fairy tale. Time slipped on by the white walls of his room, hidden away from the sun. The minutes passed slowly for some time until the sound of the textbook slamming shut brought the room back to reality. Shoujo stretched his stiff back and eagerly got started to clean up. He put his textbook back in his bag and placed his cup on the tray, leaving Alice's sitting in front of her on the floor. He said unceremoniously. He spoke as if to convince himself that he had no other choice as he prepared to leave the sleepy foyer behind. But before he could, a sound behind him stopped him in his tracks. He turned around with his bag under his arm and tray in his hands, so as not to cause even a ripple in her teacup. He greeted her.
Yeah.
In a light, easygoing manner. She remained seated on the floor next to the fireplace, like a black-eyed sleeping beauty. Her face was still a statue, almost no different than it had been in slumber. Looking at Alice now, he realized just how different she and Alko really were. Alko communicated her feelings openly, even if he never could quite tell where they came from. Her trademark expression of irritation would keep him guessing as to the reason she was angry. But to her credit, her emotional state was always clear. Alice, on the other hand, was completely unreadable. She might be angry, or then again sad. He could not tell either way. Her question gave him a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach. He could not decide whether it was animosity or perplexity that he heard in her voice. In the former, this was likely to turn into a replay of their interaction from the other night. An image of the shattered bottle sprang into his mind. Sojiro knew his response would be extremely important. And after struggling for a few moments, he finally worked up the courage to say something. Just not the correct thing, unfortunately.
そうだな。一口じゃ説明できないから。座るよ。
He had no idea what the correct approach would be, so he simply did what came into his mind instead. She gave him no response. Her face said that she detested his presence, but he plowed ahead regardless. Sojiro took a seat and sat on the tray once more. Their eyes met. Her inscrutable gaze was enough to turn most people away. I love Sojiro so much from first sight, bro. I told you. But the target of her animosity appeared not to be noticed at all.
それで何？
ああ、遅くなったけど、こうして話がしたかったんだ、アリスと。
Despite having suggested that it would take time to explain, he managed to sum things up. What? I've never heard that word. Sucks instantly? What?
会うことではなく。
ん？そうだね。青崎とはもっと話したいところだけど、それよりは3人で話してみたい。
Alice found herself out of kilter, unable to read his true intentions. Sojiro continued on, none the wiser to her bewilderment.
青崎は普段からアリスとは会話がないって言うんだ。それが俺のせいなら困るし、俺のせいじゃないならもっと困る。せっかく同じ場所にいるのに会話がないなんて、もったい。
Oh my god. Each word he spoke was heavy with emotion. Alice remained utterly unable to discern this boy's intentions. All she could parse at was that there was something he wanted from her. But what could that be? What she found even stranger was that he was not speaking to her from a place of fear.
あなたは私が怖くないの？
ああ、だってそう言えるほど俺は君をよく知らない。
This man Sojiro is so cool, bro. Her gleaming eyes looked like they were made of polished quartz. His response had not been what she expected. He spoke with pure honesty and unfeathered truth. That definitely doesn't say what I just said, but such boldness, however, did not actually upset her. The conversation ground to a halt. If you could have even called it a conversation in the first place. Alice grew tense, as if displeased by a strangely comfortable moment of silence between them. Sojiro endured her cold stare, showing no signs of flinching.
話。私と話をしたいと言ったでしょ。なら好きにしてみたら。
It was more of a challenge than an invitation. He had neither a topic on hand, nor were they intimate enough to strike up a casual conversation. Nonetheless, her challenge hung in the air, waiting for a response.
じゃあ、あの鳥の話を。ほら、そこにいる青い鳥。たまに見かけるんだけど、君の飼い鳥か？それとも、ほら、なんて言ったかな。プロイだっけ？あの鳥もアリスの使い魔？
Her eyes let slip for a moment, a very natural response. It was annoyance, such as that which one might feel towards a troublemaker.
あれもプロイだけど、私とは何の関係もない脱鳥。ずいぶん古くからいるだけで、私もよく知らないわ。
She got no respect for the bird, and neither do I. I respect that. And I love animals.
じゃあ、勝手に住んでるのか？この家に。
勝手になんて私が許すはずがないでしょう。ロビンは本当に役に立たない。あんなのでも母から譲り受けたものだから。失敗続きでも特別に住まわせてあげてるの。
Alright, now she's starting to make me feel bad for it, but he kind of does that.
安心した。ここに住むの役に立たなきゃダメってわけでもないんだね。
She turned away in silence to avoid looking at his helpless grin. Thus began Sojo's very lengthy monologue. Started with his part-time job, then moved on to the school. Next came the amusement park and random gossip around town, and last, the subject of rent. He spent all of 20 minutes on mindless small talk. Then he ran out of things to say and finally stopped.
ごめん。アルバイトがあるから。もう行くよ。
And that was that. After finally getting his long-awaited chance to talk to her, he realized he had no exit plan in place. So he returned the tray to the kitchen, placed his bag on the foyer, and headed for the door. She had never seen the boy so candid, which was why, overcome with surprise, she found herself calling out to him.
待って。
She had no reason to do so, yet she called out anyway. This is gonna be a beautiful moment, bro.
何？
I'm about to tear up. Oh my god.
その今日はポットがあったけど。
うん。昨日の反省点だったから。結局使ったのは自分だけだけど。
そう。そのポットはコーヒーとの兼用だから。ハーブティーには合わないわ。
Sojo's eyes grew wide in shock. Now he remembered that there had been all sorts of cups and teapots in the cupboard, each one specially designed for a different type of tea.
なかなかに奥深い。あれかな。慣れないことはするもんじゃないってことか。
She let out a vexed sigh.
どうして私を起こさなかったの？
Either she had not heard what he said, or she had been waiting this whole time for a chance to ask him that. In any case, her question abruptly interrupted his stream of thought. He fell silent with introspection. The thought of waking her had not so much as crossed his mind either that day or the previous one.
言って。起こす気も起きることも期待していなかったのは。
Her eyes were filled with animosity. Lies were useless against such an all-piercing gaze. The setting sun transformed the foyer into a battle of life and death. Lies or deceptive answers would not be permitted. Amidst the tension that filled the room. Like, you could have just said tension, you didn't have to say flappable or whatever. Alright. Where any move, wrong or otherwise, was likely to get him killed, he felt pain rather than fear. Alice's voice was icy cold, preemptively rejecting any response that he was to give. The boy vaguely imagined a newborn chick that had fallen from the nest, struggling to survive on its own. It gasped, hanging onto a thread of hope, yet detesting were that thread home.
言わなきゃいけないか。
Alice nodded sharply.
じゃあ言うけど、別に深い考えがあったわけじゃない。単に寝た子を起こすのは良くないだろ。
冗談は聞いてないわ。
冗談じゃないよ。眠っているのならそのままでいいと思ったんだ。話はしたいけど、それはまた目が覚めた次の機会にするべきだって。
随分と悠長なのね。青子があなたを守るのは今日までだって聞いているけど、私に取り入る機会はこれが最後なのに。それともあれだけ忠告されておいてまだ何も分かっていないの？
He had not. He swore to her, agreed to her terms, and gone as far to sit face to face with her and get to know her. Surely he thought this was enough to escape death. And she believed, as a mage, that his naive goodwill and simple-mindedness were all the reasons she needed to execute him. Trivial misunderstandings would only make things worse at this point.
そりゃ何もわからないよ。魔術とか魔法とか、たった数日でわかるもんか。はっきりしているのは、アリスも青崎も言ったことはきっちり守るってことだけだ。
ならどうして？
Her gaze said what she really wanted to ask. She wanted to know why he did not beg for his life. She knew the answer. She saw the look on his face when he turned to leave without so much as trying to wake her. A look of resignation. What on earth had it meant?
どうしてって、そう言われても困る。そうだな。機会が訪れなかったのなら、それはそういうことだと思ったのかもしれない。君の寝顔はそれぐらい、なんていうか、判断に困った。青崎とは違う意味で、簡単には関われないと思ったんだ。
Sojiro struggled to find the right words, but said what he was feeling in the moment anyway. He'd seen a sleeping witch of the wood who clearly needed someone's help, yet sought the help from no one.
そう。でも、しずきくんは関わろうとしているのね。
Alice's voice actor is so good, I'm sorry.
その機会が
Actress.
訪れなかったの。
機会はやってきたよ。なんで、こっちも今日ぐらいは自分の勝手にして無茶をしたくなったんだ。
しずきくんの言う通りなら、私はあなたを拒絶するしかないのに。
まあ、そこが難しいところなんだけど。
Sojiro glanced at the entrance. He had no reason. He had no reason to. He just felt the urge to do so.
そこを解決したがってるのは俺だけじゃないと思うよ。
He muttered as if speaking to himself, but it was clearly meant for her to hear. Alice knew full well how poorly he had understood the situation. All this was one giant misunderstanding on his part. His tiny gesture of goodwill, pitiful and pure, resembled that of someone reaching out to help a dying kitten. For Alice, doing so would be akin to clutching the thorns of a rose. She felt pain in her chest for the first time in quite a while.
けど、私はあなたの同居を認めてはいないわ。
She addressed the floor at her feet to avoid showing him how she truly felt. If he had, he would have seen that her face looked just the way Alko said earlier.
だろうな。それはきっと今は解決できない問題だ。でもそのうち何かの気まぐれであっさり終わるものかもしれない。だからその時までアリスはずっと俺を嫌っていていいんだと思う。
Her gasp of breath was like a response in itself, to suggest she could keep hating him. She had once wished to hear those words so dearly, if only once.
大体だぞ。アリスだけじゃなく、青崎も同居を認めてない節があるじゃないか。だから認めてもらうなんて意気込み自体が間違いなんだ。どうあっても俺は青崎や君たちとは違うんだし。となると、あとは我慢してもらうしかない。難しい話だけど、一緒にいても邪魔にならないぐらいなら、その可能性は上がらないか？
Thinking that, of course, it was possible. But if it were that easy, none of this would have been necessary in the first place. Alice nodded in agreement. There was no way he could have planned for things to work out this well. But his plan, in fact, had worked, if inadvertently, from the moment the conversation began.
例えば、あなたが隣にいても眠っていられるぐらいに。
そうだね。例えばの話。
Alice did not stop him this time. He had a newfound spring in his step as he headed for work. But something gave him a moment's
実
pause.
際、覗き見は趣味が悪いと思う。
He complained aloud to make sure a certain someone heard him. No more than 2 minutes had passed since Sojiro left the mansion when a long-haired figure came creeping into the foyer. Alko Awazaki had been just outside the entire time, eavesdropping.
帰ってた。
With a sullen glare, Alice addressed the interloper. Alko was shivering from head to toe after standing in the cold for so long. She deemed gloves an abomination and refused to wear them, except in the most extreme cold, As a result, her slender fingers were pitifully swollen and red. Who? Alco? Okay, yeah, Alco didn't work those. Okay.
ちょっと前にね。それでどうだったのアリス？随分と話してたみたいだけど。
She looked strangely elated as she blew on her hands to warm them. Alice was not fooled at all by Alco's facade, clear from the ill-tempered look she wore on her face.
あなたがここまで過保護とは思わなかったわ。意地？それとも義務？
どっちかっていうと成り行きね。で、どうだったのよ結果は。気に食わなかったら実力行使に出るって言ってたじゃない。
Alice's mood was growing darker and darker the longer she had to look at Alco's cheerful posturing. It all went back to their dinner together the previous night. After everything that happened in the foyer, Alice was both more suspicious and intrigued by Sojiro than ever before. She insisted that Alco let him walk home alone the next day. She then used a concoction to fake her slumber and recreate the same scene. Okay, yeah. I was like, there's no way she fell asleep there again. To make matters worse, Alice was frustrated at herself for letting such trivial matters bother her. She stared at the teacup, still sitting on the floor. Her pale finger traced its cold rim.
青子の言う通り、害にはならない人ね。あくまで今のところの話だけど。
She forced a ton of indifference in order to hide her irritation with her apprentice. It was in this moment, that Sojiro's fate was decided.
あら、それだけ？アリスにしては長く話してたのに。
Relentless, Akko continued her line of questioning. Wait, so it was Alice that said that about the intruder, not Sojiro? I see. That makes more sense. Alice only stared back icily.
青子、あなた、隠していたわね。
She voiced her displeasure at Akko's behavior in no uncertain terms. Suddenly, the air in the foyer felt cold as ice. They stared at one another, each trying to guess the other's move.
さすがね。よくそこに気がついたもんだわ。でも、こればかりは譲れないのよ。
Akko widened her stance and glared at Alice.
何もすべて奪うとは言っていないわ。そうね。あなたにも3割ぐらいは。
Oh my god. they're about to argue about the rent. Completely unperturbed by Alco's warlike posturing, a simple look was all Alice needed to keep her roommate in check.
10が3に化けちゃちょっと黙ってらんないわね。
高望みは命取りよ、青子。
Alice remained calm and dignified, not moving a muscle. It felt like hours passed as the two stared at each other in silence. Alco was grinding her teeth in frustration. At this rate, their alliance would be in tatters before they even confronted their foe. And worst of all, she knew Alice had the upper hand. Alco accepted her defeat with a tisk.
悔しいけど、アリスが6、私が4で手を打つわ。
It pained her to settle for less. Alice nodded in satisfaction.
そうね。家主は私だけど、彼を招いたのは青子だから。
いいけど。ああ、情けない。こんなことなら錬金術でもかじっておくんだった。そうすればこんな思いをしなくても済んだのに。
そうでもないわ。彼ら、バブルが弾けて大変だって話よ。
Alice spoke with confidence, the confidence of someone with first-hand experience of such matters. Yet Alco only nodded abstinently in response. Their bitter fight was over how to split the take of Sojiro's rent now that he is officially going to move in. Not the most becoming quarrel for the pair of mages. Forcing a boy to live with them and demanding he pay rent was beyond extortion. It was truly vicious.
でも、そんなセリフが出るってことは、アリスもようやく認めたってことね。
Alko was triumphantly satisfied with herself.
認めてはいないけど、公園での夜、彼を結界で捕捉しなかった責任があるから、彼と約束をした青子だけを責められないでしょ。
約束か。
Alko looked at the ceiling as she recalled the night of the amusement park. Only a week at most had passed since then, but Alko already felt that Sojirio's fate and her own had become intrinsically, I can't say, I know what the word is, but I just can't say it. Intrinsically, I can't say it, linked. Or perhaps they had always been connected by fate since the moment they met. She could not see into the future, so there was no way to know for sure.
ま、縁とか運とかはともかく、変だけどいいやつよね、あいつ。
A thought uttered to herself in self-confirmation more than to Alice. Alice could only look on in annoyance, perhaps in an attempt to voice her displeasure at her comment.
青子、あの傷を知ってる？
傷？
Alice raised her slender fingers to her mouth as if to push the words back in. She had blurted it out in the heat of the moment. A secret that no one else was supposed to know, but that which one couldn't keep to herself. Alko tilted her head in confusion.
So.
Alice looked relieved for some reason. Her sudden antipathy. Oh, antipathy. I've heard that word before. Yeah. I got it. I know English. I know a little bit of English. Towards Alko had dissipated as well.
幸せな人
said Alice as she took a sip of her cold tea. She made no attempt to explain who was fortunate or why. A moment later, her beautiful face contorted in revulsion. It's so bad. She abandoned the cup to the floor once more, her black dress unceremoniously scrunched up as she stood. Just one sip of the underbrewed tea sent her fleeing into the drawing room to remove the bad taste from her mouth. As soon as she was gone, Alko hesitatingly took the teacup in her own hands. It was almost certainly better left untasted, but she could not help but wonder how Sojirio's tea could arouse such a strong response. After one small sip, she returned it quietly to the floor.
だからティーバッグにしろって言ったのに、あのバカ。
They just drinking hot water. The expression on her face was nearly identical to that of her roommates. And there it is. Are you for real? New book added to the archives. Hold on. We doing another 1.5? Oh my god, we've progressed so much. Martha. I guess we'll start with Martha next, huh? That's so interesting. I'm sorry, that puts a smile on my face. I love these 1.5 chapters right here were so good. So good. So seeing them kind of come back, I can't wait. I can't wait to see the extra chapter, but that would have to be in the next episode. Are you for real? But for now, we go back to title and listen to our main theme. Gameplay recording resumed because you exited. Am I allowed to upload any of this? I'm about to get another copyright strike. If you didn't know, I already have one copyright strike because I uploaded a joke video saying how to become a good Twitch YouTuber. And literally, this is like amongst like whole Pokemon thing, and everyone was getting banned. Like execute, they're all getting banned for watching anime. So I literally just put up a fake webcam and said, "This is how you become a good Twitch streamer," and just played a movie that was already on YouTube and not copyrighted, so I had thought I'd be safe, but nah, they copyright struck it. I was like, okay, and that's there permanently. I don't know how to get rid of it, so it's whatever. And it deleted the video anyway, so it's like, what's the point? But that being said, that'll be all for today. Witch on the Holy Night. I really have to get this down better. I don't know what stopped me from recording previously and getting this done before, the day before, because now it's 9:49. I have to edit it for tomorrow, and it's a lot of work and extra stuff on my part, but yeah, hopefully next time I'll get it done before, because I don't really like doing these things last minute. It kind of makes me feel kind of stressed, and I really want to get these out to you. I don't want to have to do cope or like anything like that, do double uploads instead. But that being said, I hope you guys can enjoy what you've got, and I'm sorry for the amount of edits that we're going through. I like to keep these videos as vanilla as possible and like to just have it running, because it's a book. I don't want the music to be stopped. I don't want anything to be weird like that. So sorry for that, but just the circumstances of how everything went today. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, Witching the Holy Night is amazing. As I've said, even throughout the video, the music, the setting, everything. And I hope you guys can pick it up yourselves or continue reading with me. So, I'll see you guys in the next one. Use Bridge Eternal. Remember, there's no such thing as hard, just telling you when to fight.